wake up. You check your phone. You have 47 unread emails, a calendar full of meetings, and a title on your LinkedIn profile that took you 3 years to earn. You are a person with a career. And for most of human history, that sentence would have been completely incomprehensible. Not because ancient humans were less intelligent, not because they lacked ambition, but because the entire concept of a career, a fixed role, a title, a ladder to climb, is one of the strangest inventions our species has ever produced. It is younger than wheat. It is younger than the wheel. In the full 300,000-year story of Homo sapiens, the career has existed for roughly the last half of 1% of that time. So what did your ancestors have instead? The answer is something so different from what you know that it might take a moment to fully land. For the vast majority of human existence, you did not have a job. You had skills. And the difference between those two things changes almost everything about how a human life is structured, what it feels like from the inside, and what it does to a person when it is taken away. Let's go back. Further, to the Pleistocene, to the open grasslands of eastern Africa, roughly 70,000 years ago. Your ancestors live in a band of somewhere between 20 and 50 people. They move, they follow game, seasonal plants, and water sources across a landscape they have memorized over generations. In this world, there is no division of labor in the way you would recognize it. There is no baker, no accountant, no logistics coordinator. There is no one whose entire identity is tied to one function they perform for 8 hours a day in exchange for a resource they then use to obtain other resources. What exists instead is something anthropologists call a generalist skill set. Everyone in the band knows how to do most of the things required to survive. Everyone can read animal tracks. Everyone knows which plants are edible and which will kill you by morning. Everyone can construct a basic shelter, tend a fire, prepare food, and navigate by stars. The knowledge is distributed, not specialized. This is not a guess. The ethnographic record, decades of fieldwork studying modern hunter-gatherer societies, makes it remarkably clear. The anthropologist James Sussman spent years living with and studying the Hoansi of the Kalahari, one of the world's oldest surviving hunter-gatherer cultures. What he found was a society almost entirely without job titles. People did things. They did not become things. But that does not mean everyone did exactly the same things. Here is where it gets interesting. Within the generalist baseline, individuals naturally gravitated toward particular skills. One person was exceptionally good at tracking. Another had an almost supernatural ability to find water in dry ground. Another was the one people turned to when someone was sick, or when a decision needed to be made, or when the group needed to laugh after 3 days of failed hunts. These roles were fluid. They were earned through demonstrated ability, not assigned by a system. And critically, they were never the whole of a person. The tracker was also a parent, a storyteller, a maker of tools, a member of the band who danced around the fire and helped carry a sick elder and argued about which direction to travel next. The role did not define the person. The person contained the role. Richard Lee's landmark fieldwork with the Dobeju's Hoansi in the 1960s produced a finding that shocked Western researchers at the time. He calculated that hunter-gatherers in that environment needed to work, in the sense of actively foraging for food, for roughly 3 to 5 hours per day. The rest of the time, was spent resting, talking, making things, playing, and maintaining social bonds. 3 to 5 hours. This was not laziness. This was efficiency. The land provided. The band knew how to read it. And because no one person's entire identity was staked on a single economic function, the failure of one activity did not collapse a person's sense of self. Think about what that means for a moment. When a hunter came back empty-handed, which happened regularly, he was not a failed hunter. He was a person who had not caught anything that day. The distinction sounds small. It is enormous. In contemporary life, when your job disappears, the research is unambiguous. People do not just lose income. They lose identity. They lose purpose. They lose the answer to the question strangers ask at parties within 30 seconds of meeting them. What do you do? Your ancestor never had to answer that question. Or rather, the answer was simply, everything. I do what is needed. I do what I am good at. I do what the moment requires. The shift began with agriculture. When humans began farming, roughly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent, and independently in several other regions, the generalist way of life began a slow, irreversible retreat. Farming requires staying in one place, and staying in one place demands specialization. Someone tends crops, someone stores grain, someone guards it, someone builds walls. Once that wheel starts turning, it doesn't stop. At early settlements like Çatalhöyük, occupied from approximately 7,500 BCE, skeletal remains already show role differentiation. Bioarchaeologists like Clark Spencer Larson found more repetitive stress injuries, more dental disease from grain diets, more evidence of the same physical labor performed day after day. The body was beginning to specialize, and with the body, the self. Cities accelerated this. In Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, the Yellow River Basin, dense populations demanded scribes, merchants, soldiers, priests, jobs. And jobs need names, and names attached to people. Hammurabi's code, circa 1754 BCE, already made legal distinctions by profession. The job wasn't just what you did, but what you were. Now, you have a resume, a career trajectory, a 5-year plan, maybe a therapist to discuss the anxiety of not feeling fulfilled by your work. A sentence that would have needed a lot of explaining 50,000 years ago. The irony is plain. The career organized complex societies. It gave us cities, writing, science, medicine, but it also took the multi-dimensional human, the tracker who is also a storyteller, the healer who is also a mother, and narrowed them to a function. Who you are became what you produce. That narrowing has a cost. A 2019 meta-analysis on occupational identity found that the more tightly people fuse their identity with their job title, the more devastating job loss becomes, not just financially, but existentially. The thing meant to give purpose becomes the thing that makes people fragile. Your ancestors were fragile in other ways: cold, hungry, hunted, often gone before 35. No one's romanticizing the Pleistocene, but this particular fragility, not knowing who you are without a job title, wasn't part of their lives. Instead, they had contribution, daily, visible, needed by a group they depended on in turn. They had broad competence rather than narrow depth. Roles shifted with age and season, not a single ladder. And there was no work-life balance because there was no split. Tracking, cooking, teaching, singing around a fire were all just being human. You wake up and check a calendar that defines who you are. Your ancestor woke up and asked, "What does today need?" Then they got up and did it.